This is the bonus section podcast, episode number 59, a discovery about how depression and anxiety might be defeated. Are you the type of person that knows you are meant for something greater in this lifetime and that somewhere inside of you there's just this bigger version of yourself trying to break through? But in spite of all your self-development, you just can't seem to find the way up there? Well then, hey, you are definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the bonus section and the host of this podcast, and a person just like you, trying to learn how to live the most fulfilling life possible. Now, to help you take immediate action to get moving in a better direction, we take the notes from each episode, and for a short time, we post them over at freethinkingtools.com, freethinkingtools.com. That way you can set some time aside to think your way up that mountain to your goal. All right, let's talk about this. It's an interesting subject, and I'm going to warn you, yes, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a trained psychiatrist, psychologist, psychoanalyst. I'm none of those things. I'm just a guy who lives in the same world you live in and has an incredible opportunity to observe people across multiple platforms in my life, not the least of which is my coaching program. In my business, I have been talking to people as a coach for a very long time and thousands of hours every single year for a long time. I mean a long time. I've coached clients that are agents, sellers, buyers through the single largest financial and emotional transaction most of them have ever been involved in a lifetime. But on top of that, I have 5 kids and a close family. And so through all of this, you get to be an observer of all things in life. And sometimes there are wirings and there are things that the synapses connect in a way that you didn't see the simplicity of something so beautiful amongst the chaos. See, we always find ourselves, I just did a podcast from my business about chaos. Business people enter into chaos and they find themselves there. It is the people, the company, the group of people that put together organization in that chaos that tend to be successful. So in the chaos of watching kids grow up, you see how these distinctions are made and they teach you as you observe. So the first point here is the twins experiment. So if you know anything about me, if you don't, I had 3 girls first with my wife, and then be careful what you pray for. We got twin boys. So my knees buckled, by the way, when they told her that it looked like twins, maybe triplets, after 3 girls at home. So the twins, the boys, they're quite the experiment. They're very different from the girls, the way that they grow and they behave. And what's fascinating is they're fraternal twins, so they're very different themselves. Yes, plenty of similarities and loving brothers and, they'll beat the crap out of each other and they'll hug each other and, typical stuff with kids. But they're different. Jack is very cerebral. He loves all things academic, and he's an extremely competitive student. And Marty is an extremely competitive athlete who has pursued for a very long time, becoming very good at hockey. Now, in those endeavors, and by the way, the girls are fascinating in their own right. They're all 3 different people, but let me stay with the twins experiment for a second. So it's fascinating to watch these 2 different cats pursue what they pursue. And you're looking, as you coach them and help them, you're looking for where they hit the bumps in the road. Well, as I record this, we are really at hopefully the tail end of COVID, the pandemic. And so these 2 young guys this past year were 17 years old, soon to be 18. And COVID collides with both of their paths for success. And the disruption and the chaos that gets heaved upon these 2 guys really makes things difficult. So to make a long story short, to pursue hockey, we make a dramatic move to put Marty in another state at another school with my in-laws, and my wife and I have to go back and forth, and Jack's in Boston going to school, and he's half in, half out of school. So chaos. I mean, you talk about chaos colliding with greased skids that you're on. So to make a long story short, it exacerbates Marty's anxiety and creates a little bit of a depression state in Jack. And so when you look at that, you start to wonder, how can you help? And sometimes they think I'm more rough and tumble than I actually am. Oh, you're going to say I'm a wimp and I should just... No, I'm not going to say that at all. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to look for the teachable moment, because all of us, at some point or another, enter into some sort of a depressed or anxious state. It just seems to be the human condition for all of us, right? That if we don't eat as an animal, we're probably down and depressed. If we don't get out of the cave and go hunt dinner, then we're probably pretty anxious that we might end up hungry and depressed. So, these are things that they're not going away. And, well, let me not get ahead of myself. So when chaos rained on these things and it made the pursuit of being academically inclined and doing really well, Jack's only in school some days and not the others. So a lot of those days he found himself alone in an apartment in Boston studying, and you can get up on your head and things can happen. And Marty has to go to a whole brand new school. By the way, at this point in time, this was his third high school, because for a variety of reasons, we were trying to find the right fit. So he's in the third spot, has to show up and make all new friends and new teammates. And yeah, that's a lot, isn't it? Right? But let's go to the first twin, and that's Jack. So how perfectionism leads to closed-mindedness and depression. This is what happens with a guy like this. And this is for all you super uber type A high achievers. I know I have a little bit of both of these guys in me. And the idea is perfectionism. When you are academically, probably, I don't know where he stands. They don't really rank him at his school, but he knows who the top 10 to 20 guys are in his school. It's all boys school, very competitive, very bright guys. And they're all trying to be perfect. And so when you're trying to be perfect, there are a lot of cognitive distortions that get created out of anything, but perfectionism really leads to closed-mindedness. Let me express this, because I expressed this to Jack. By the way, they both know I'm talking about them on the podcast today, because these are just fresh lessons, and I just felt, this is good stuff. I got to share this. So if you're trying to get perfect on every test and you're busting your butt, late nights, and this guy gets on the train, he goes into the Harvard library and pretends he goes to Harvard and studies with people like that. That's the kind of mindset that this kid has to compete. And it works, and he does well. But you don't always win. And so what happens is you write a poor paper, you take a poor test, something goes awry even when you're at the top of the game. And it feels catastrophic to somebody who's always striving for that. So the cognitive distortion, meaning the over-exaggeration, the all or nothing thinking, oh my gosh, I got this poor grade, I'll never get into this Ivy League school. That's what happens, just like that. Or my favorite choice, whatever it might be. And now all of a sudden, there's a crack in the armor. And the grade comes back, for example, and the teacher begins to explain the course correction, right? And it's not accepted. Instead, what happens, because you've been trying to be perfect for so long, is the defense mechanism rises very quickly. But I did this, but I did that. And you become argumentative with the teacher, who is the very person that's trying to instruct you how to get the perfect grade, and you can no longer hear. And so now you don't hear. Now you're in a tussle. That doesn't make you feel good. Now you go home, and maybe you're alone with your thoughts, and there's been no outlet. Think about this. There's been no outlet for correction, for acceptance that this is just part of life. It's not that big of a deal. It's not. It's not the end of the world. Everybody has their path. It's got nothing to do with laziness. It's got nothing to do with letting your parents down. It has to do with the wind blew against you and blew you off course a little bit. But if you have now become closed-minded, you're allowing yourself to be blown off course even more. Why? Because you're not hearing the constructive criticism anymore. Your mind is closed to the fact that you might have been a little bit off, and that the corrective advice could be given to you like this if you could only accept it, if you could only hear it. So I know that had happened in a class, but more pertinently, it happened in a coaching moment. Now again, here I am, coach. And one of the greatest frustrations as a coach is when you really want somebody to trust you so much with the corrective information or the directive. I have a saying with my clients, please do exactly what I tell you to do, so that if it doesn't work, it's fully on my shoulders. But the minute you start to argue with me or defend, now I don't know fully what you're doing. You're only pulling part of what I've learned to protect you. We have a real uncoachable moment and we have a real problem. Now we have all these variables. So when it comes to coaching, if you're into something, for example, in this case, crew, Jack decides to become the coxswain on a crew team. Well, I had suggested it because I just could see that he had this funny, motivational, great way of relating to people and a really brilliant analytical mind. Well, if you think about what a coxswain does, steering the boat, counting the beats on where we are, and motivating people, that's kind of a cool orchestration of a skill set. I just thought the guy had it. So he goes out for the crew team and very quickly has a lot of success and is recognized by the coach as being into it. What coach doesn't want somebody who's into it, who's into learning? This guy goes on YouTube, and he got started late. So he goes on YouTube, and he learns, and he comes out, and he's effective to a large extent. But I go to one meet, my first one, and I'm standing up on the MIT bridge over by MIT, the Massachusetts Avenue Bridge, to give you a real visual. And I'm looking down, and he's rowing against my old high school, who I know is good at this, right? So they come under the bridge, and I watch the boat go. And I watch it do a little bit of a fishtail. So I'm like, okay. So his steering was a little bit off. Well, Jack comes in after. I said, pretty good. You lost to them by not much. It was pretty close. I said, but I think you could have beat them if you straightened your line out. Oh, the wind was blowing. The wind was blowing for them too. You fishtailed. Accept it or not. See what I mean? And that's what perfectionism does to us, that when we're always trying to be so damn perfect at something, we can't even hear what was just really like an innocent little observation. It looked like you fishtailed a little bit, and I think if you straighten that out, if you learned how to do that. And the guy was relatively brand new to a very high-pitched race, and I mean, boy, when you hear him shouting the orders, it's not even like the same guy. And we hear him counting the beats, you're like, wow, he's got it, he's just got to get it down. But he's closed-minded to my advice. And I know what he was thinking, you don't know anything about crew. Well, I know about observation as a coach. I can pretty much observe almost anything and very quickly tell you, something feels off. I'm not expert at it, but you better go see your coach about what this is. So to keep going in that becomes one of those things that he's not working on because the orchestration of the motivation and the beats is very complicated, and he's working on that and gets caught up in that and doesn't really listen about finding your point. So I go to another race, and he wins. The boat wins. They crush the competition. But as soon as the race is over, the coach slams him. So here you are thinking, you're the cat's meow, but this guy is trying to make him better. And he slams him. And instead of accepting why, he says it quickly, just out of embarrassment of getting slammed in front of 8 other guys in the boat. Instead of accepting it, and it's the same critique, by the way, I gave, your point's off. You should have won by even more. Look where you are. Look where they started. Look where you ended. And it's real, and it's aggressive. You're going to find that with some coaches. I'm like that with coaches, coaching clients that already know me and trust me. I'll go right out and say, no, stop. Just stop. Stop talking. Stop talking. Your mind is chaotic. I'm trying to cleanse it all out and get rid of that. You get rid of that burden. So not everybody can take to that, but you should be able to take to the point. We need constructive criticism if we want to continue on the course, because there's no such thing as perfection. Ask the guided missile that's much smarter than our brains to course correct quickly and not get emotional about it. That's a Maxwell Maltz, Dan Kennedy-esque psycho-cybernetics technique that I learned long ago. Just look at feedback for what it is. It's black and white. And like I said to him, the qualitative part of this, I said, look, there will oftentimes be authoritative or adult information, constructive criticism, that's wrong. I mean, I'm thinking of some Olympic athletes that, their teachers told them, you should quit swimming and focus on studies. You're not going anywhere swimming. And she got I don't know what color medal it was, but a gold medal. So there are adults and authoritative figures that are wrong. There's no doubt about it. But I'm just trying to warn you all, don't become so close-minded that you're actually triggering your own depression. Because when you don't allow that constructive criticism to come in, process it, use the parts of it that you know are right and course correct you, you're bubbling that up and you're building up this depressive bubble that's really just about to pop. And that's dangerous. And if you're listening to this podcast and you feel that way, please see a professional immediately to deal with what you have created. In the long run, my best advice is have some fun with the course correction, the chaos. Have some fun with it. That's the part of life that it's never perfectly organized for us. And if you think it's going to be, it's not. Deal with the reality that chaos reigns. The next point here is Marty. So Marty is a hockey player, but I explained to him, the third point, how the lack of a clear goal and an action plan leads to this anxiety that he's suffering from. So you see, once the anxiety gets out of control, and I've dealt definitely with anxiety. I'm not so sure depression, I probably felt that, but anxiety was more my thing when I was young. And the goals that I had stopped, or I was feeling course correction in my life was required, and I wouldn't accept it. I just wasn't seeing it for the simplicity that it was and saying, okay, maybe this isn't the right career path. Maybe this isn't as important to me. Maybe I don't like this job, but I can just course correct and do something that I like and still reach the goals that I have set for myself. And so as I watch him, what I notice is that albeit he knows he wants to be a Division I hockey player at the best school he can get into, and that's the ultimate goal, wonderful. The real question is, what's the action plan that's being executed? It can't always be Dad, who knows how to coach and strategize and all. It can't always be me. You have to wake up and know why that goal is important to you and continue to question it. And he knows that. But it's this lack of an action plan. It's the lack of taking the time to put together the plan, to take a few minutes with a pencil and a pad of paper. And I get it. For all the young guys out there, the frontal lobe maybe doesn't, grow until maybe it's a little bit late. But really, this isn't rocket science to come up with an action plan. If you're a hockey player, there are certain things you need to do. You need to work out and get stronger. You need to skate and get better. You need to shoot the puck on the regular basis. And you need to go get coaches who will tell you how you're going to get to that goal with them. You can't just disappear. You can't make noise and be the funny guy that goes into the rink all the time and everybody likes, because you, my friend, have to go seek that course correction from those people. Your anxiety can't be such that you don't ask to be corrected. You don't ask to say, what would you do if you were me? See, those are all the things that go along with an action plan. So it's almost like the same thing. It strikes me that the whole story about Jack being a perfectionist and not taking constructive criticism is also why Marty's anxiety gets exacerbated, because he won't take the course correction and start the plan. Jack's plan is much more clear and analytically driven. Marty's is relatively clear, but there's no clear action plan. Well, what do I do? Or what do I say? Well, wait a minute. What do you mean, what do you do? You know exactly where you'll probably be next year. So how many of those coaches are you asking to be on their radar this year? What teams? Is anybody interested? Bubble them up one by one. What do you want to tell them about you today? See, but when you get caught up in all this depression and anxiety, you begin to have these cognitive distortions that it's like this big deal. See, an action plan can be very simple. It can be as little as one step. If my room is chaotic, and I ignore that, or I leave, my dishes in the sink, and I don't clean up the car after I use it, all those little things seem like nothing. But it's a manifestation of the lack of clarity and intentional movement in your brain. You're manifesting what's going on in your brain. Look at it. All of you teenagers, look at it. You're a mess. You know why? Even if you have a goal, there's no action plan that you're executing each day. And what you're doing is indulging yourself in distractions. All these movies on your phone, these videos on your phone, the Snapchatting back and forth, whatever, it's fine if the action step was the first thing that you did every day. But how dare you wake up and be mad at the world or question why you have anxiety when you don't take an action step towards the thing that you want? What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? And it's not like this big, heavy self-discipline thing. Well, you've got to wake up and be more self-disciplined. Maybe you should go to a military academy and then beat the crap out of your minds. Why? Why is it always something so dramatic when it could be so simple? Get a simple action plan of what's the next step that you need in the ladder to get there, and go seeking coaching and guidance about it. Ask a lot of questions of your peers, of coaches, and when they tell you, well, if I were you, I wouldn't be doing this or did, accept it. So for the depressed and the anxious, look and seek for that course correction. Accept it with humility. Make your own adjustment and look for the evidence that it did move you in the right direction. Now, the last part here, I'll bring in my father as a family conversation that follows this. He has struggled with alcohol abuse for a very, very long time, and recently has been able to put himself in a state that's not that. And so for all of you fans of CBD oil, he has discovered this, and somebody, got him some of that in a medicinal way. And I've always said to him, look, man, when you are in this heightened state, you have to recognize these depressed states or these anxiety states are growing. And if we don't get them dealt with professionally when they're really already heightened with the proper treatment, then how the heck are we going to have these conversations about accepting constructive criticism when we're just physically already gone? So you have to recognize that in the worst case, a cognitive distortion about how to deal with anxiety and depression, okay, you improperly deal with it with booze, drugs, and whatever other crazy behavior that we do just to distract it. See, the movie watching or the distraction of making noise and trying to be funny, it can become something very dangerous in and of itself to your physical and mental health in a very long run. So deal with this stuff. Like I said, the order of things. Right now, you or anybody you know that is depressed or anxious and it feels out of control, immediately seek the help of a medical professional who's there to deal with that moment. In my own experiential way with coaching clients and children, I'm telling you, seek and search for the ways to get help and constructive criticism and feedback on how to get after a goal that's important to you. I don't care how small you think it is, it's everything to you. All right, let me go back and chunk this up, okay? It's a tough subject because there's a lot going on here to unpack. I made a discovery this week about how depression and anxiety might be defeated. And again, my caveat there is I'm not a medical professional. Seek that if you find yourself in a heightened state. There's help. But I have these twins. So I watched this experiment. One struggled a little bit this year with depression, one with anxiety. So I had this experiment. I could see what was going on. With Jack, I saw how perfectionism led to closed-mindedness, the unwillingness to accept constructive feedback and course correct, which could have easily dealt with the avoidance of depression. But when he didn't accept that as a real part of life, he bundled it up until this ball of depression was really heavy. Marty has a clear goal, but he didn't really have a clear action plan. And when you don't have a clear action plan, the chaos of not having one, the dream sits there, but there's no steps going towards it. And that exacerbates anxiety. And you can see that manifested in the way that you live. Be observant. If your life looks like it's chaotic and you're always complaining about ADD in a joking way, not a medical way, something's wrong with your plan. So sit down and get clear. And 4, in the worst case, these cognitive distortions that are created by depression and anxiety at their heightened state can really lead you to improperly deal with this. I'll be cautious as to what I say here, but there are some ugly things you do or might do if you don't get this stuff organized in your life. And embrace it. We all have it. This is part of the human condition. Everybody suffers from this stuff, not just you. So please feel included. Let me summarize it this way. This week I was able to make a new distinction about anxiety and depression thanks to my twin boys and ultimately my father. I learned that it appears very clear to me now that there are many triggers that might set us up to suffer. But it's clear to me that the acceptance, the acceptance of constructive criticism as being nothing more than course corrective information, coupled with being intentional about having a clear goal and an action plan to achieve it, both of those things serve as powerful weapons to fight back against anxiety and depression instead of resorting to harmful behaviors such as drugs, alcohol, or something much worse. Okay, remember, one final time, if you find yourself hearing this in a heightened state, please immediately seek medical help from somebody trained to deal with depression and anxiety, because there is help for it, and it works. And in the long run, life is so fun if you can see all the chaos as an opportunity to fight through it, put the piece of the puzzle together like a game, and win. All right, now remember, you can take immediate action to get moving in a better direction because we take all the notes from each episode and we post them at freethinkingtools.com. Also, don't forget, of course, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And remember, we are the bonus section, so you can find us on social media, anywhere, and you can listen to these episodes each time we upload. Of course, YouTube is easy to do it there. We'd also appreciate it if you would join our mission of becoming people for others and share content especially like this. If you know somebody struggling with their depression or anxiety, have them listen to this. Provoke a conversation. Listen to them. Help them. Because we all need this, right? But remember this, please, if you're listening to it too, nobody's coming for you. I'm telling you, nobody's coming for you. Don't wait for them. Don't assume they're coming for you. Go get to work instead yourself on a better plan for your life by taking action, and we will see you